So let's dig into establishing guidelines for communication and interaction. To start with, it's a great idea to set some clear communication policies. Well, not at the beginning of the semester, clearly, but at the beginning of this part of your education experience. Be clear about your personal response times. You might want to set some specific parameters for each form of communication, such as I'll respond to your emails within 24 hours during the week and within 48 hours on the weekend. Your students may be anywhere in the world at this point, and if you are getting emails at 3 a.m., they need to understand that they're not going to expect a response within an hour on that. It's also good to set expectations for how often students should check their own email. People in their age group don't really use email that much. They're much more text-oriented and such. So you need to let them know that they can expect to have important class updates on a regular basis, and they should check maybe once a day, maybe once an hour, depending on how much you're communicating with them. You'll be asking them to have some form of discussion or interaction, most likely. So it's good to set expectations for respectful but vigorous interactions. They should be no different online than in person. Make your expectations explicit and easy for students to locate. Perhaps you could put them in more than one location, for example, a syllabus and in forum instructions. It's also helpful to include guidelines of basic netiquette to students in your syllabus, because online communication is not necessarily the sort of communication you're looking for within a classroom environment. Suggest that they avoid typing in all caps, as it's often perceived as yelling. They should always make an effort to use proper punctuation, grammar, and spelling. And also, it's good for them to be mindful of tone. You should remind them that sarcasm can be misinterpreted in an online environment where you don't have tone of voice or facial expression to provide contextual clues. Some examples unique to online discussions would include explicit instructions for how often students should post in forums or respond to peers' contributions. For example, each week you are responsible for posting at least one original post in response to a forum prompt by a certain date and time, and 2 response posts by a later date and time. Or perhaps you must log into the Sakai forum a minimum of 3 separate days during the time the discussion is active. In other words, you can't do all your posts in one day. You should also set some parameters for how you'd want your students to structure their forum posts or group work contributions. This will make reviewing the material and possibly grading it much easier. For example, write the title of your topic in the message, header, or subject box before submitting, or keep your post focused on the topic or thread. Your post should be no longer than 175 words. Conversely, your response to someone else's post needs to be longer than "I agree with Bob." Responses should indicate agreement or disagreement and why. You might offer an alternative explanation or provide peers with additional information such as an article or website. All of these things will encourage students to have a much better communication and interaction experience. You might want to provide details on how students will be evaluated on their contributions to online discussion or group work. Let students know how they'll be graded. If the grade is based on quality of submission, consider including a rubric so that students can better understand their grade and how to improve the next submission. Let students know if they can lose points in any other way. Perhaps you could tell them points will be taken off for inappropriate comments or argumentative statements. For group work, consider a peer review process where students can evaluate their other group members based on a predetermined set of criteria. You could map out guidelines for how disagreements will be resolved in a group. Or you could provide details of expectations of student roles in group projects. Provide timely feedback on all discussion assignments to cultivate a social presence and support learner improvement. Just like with emails, as mentioned before, you should tell students when they can expect to receive feedback. And even after that, it's a good idea to send feedback as soon after the assignment as possible to give students an adequate amount of time to reflect before moving on to the next assessment or assignment.